the 2025 legislative session, the Arizona State Legislature passed HB 2110, which requires cities to allow the adaptive reuse or redevelopment of existing commercial, office, and mixed-use parcels for multifamily housing on at least 10% of such parcels citywide, without requiring public input or hearings. This law expands upon the provisions of HB 2297, passed in 2024, and mandates the use of objective standards for qualifying projects. As a result of the state legislation, Scottsdale now must amend its zoning code to comply with state law. The state of Arizona grants cities and towns with local authority the ability to set zoning and land use regulations subject to state law. However, House Bill 2110 was passed and then signed into law by the governor in April 2025, preempting Scottsdale on the provisions outlined in the new law. Scottsdale opposed the bill as it was working its way through the legislative process. The city argued that local governments are better equipped to handle housing issues, while still allowing for public input and preserving the unique character of the community. With the passage of the bill, Scottsdale must now update the zoning code to remain in compliance with the new state law. Adaptive reuse means converting a parcel with an existing building from the use for which it was constructed to a new use by either maintaining the existing building or constructing a new one. The new state law allows for the adaptive reuse of parcels to multifamily residential development if the parcel or parcels are between 1 and 20 acres in size with existing commercial, office, and mixed-use buildings and are either in a state of disrepair or have at least 50% vacancy in leasable square feet. There is a limit on the number of properties that can benefit from the state legislation subject to specific criteria and further, cannot exceed 10% of such existing parcels. If a parcel meets the criteria set forth by the new law, the city cannot require a public hearing. Consequently, the typical public outreach, rezoning, conditional use permits, or development review hearings that the city would normally require with such a change in buildings and land use cannot be required. Further, development standards such as building height, setbacks, density, and parking would be dictated by previously approved multifamily development in the context area of a site seeking adaptive reuse and not by the city. The city, however, can require administrative site plan review and approval, compliance with building and fire codes, adequate public sewer and water service, public utility review, and 10% of total multifamily housing units be designated for either moderate or low-income housing over a 20-year period. Finally, the city can exclude parcels within the vicinity of an airport, up to 10% of parcels with commercial office mixed-use buildings, and historic properties from the provisions of this law. As we just explained, the new law allows the city to exclude historic properties, parcels within the vicinity of an airport, and up to 10% of parcels with commercial office mixed-use buildings designated as commercial employment hubs. For Scottsdale, 10% of the 404 eligible parcels equates to 40 parcels that may be designated as commercial employment hubs. The new law would permit 10% of parcels with existing buildings to be eligible for adaptive reuse to multifamily. Thus, 40 parcels may be eligible to take advantage of this law. In 2024, the city designated sites amounting to 10% of the existing commercial, employment, and mixed-use buildings so as to exclude from the provisions of the state law. With the updates provided within HB 2110, the city will review and designate 10% of the existing commercial, employment, and mixed-use parcels so as to exclude from the provisions of the state law. Formal action must be taken to update the city's zoning code. Since HB 2110 includes an emergency clause, it became effective the day it was signed by the governor. Consequently, these new provisions must be adopted by local municipalities within 90 days or no later than July 6, 2025. The city began this update process with the city's Planning Commission initiation of the Zoning Code Amendment in May 2025. 2 public outreach meetings will be held on May 12 and 15. The Planning Commission will hold a recommendation hearing on May 28. The amendment will then go to the full City Council for their consideration, review, and possible action in June 2025. The city must have these new rules adopted into its zoning code by July 6, 2025 as per state law. After this has been completed, the city will pursue an effort to amend its general plan through a separate public input and hearing process as a result of any zoning code changes that occur with this zoning code amendment. Visit scottsdaleaz.gov, keyword active planning cases and permits, and reference 3 TA 2024, number 2 in the case number field. Or link with the QR code provided to see the full version of HB 2110, the topic of this presentation, which requires the city to amend its zoning code, review the proposed draft zoning code amendment that addresses HB 2110, provide public comment, and stay up to date on the public hearing schedule and continued opportunities to provide public input. Thank you for your interest in Scottsdale's efforts to comply with state law.